Good morning. This is a video on risk, one of the sections that we look at in probability. And we look today especially at risk and relative risk and what's the difference. And risk is just another word for probability, but it's often used when there's a negative association. Things like the risk of cancer, the risk of accidents, car accidents, the risk of death, those kind of things. And relative risk is calculated by comparing the risk of one group with the risk of another. So you have the risk of, for example, smoking, smokers, and compared to that of non-smokers, and you come up with a relative risk. Relative risk can be very misleading, so watch out for this. If the probabilities are very small, quite tiny, for example, 1 chance in 1,000, 1 chance in 100,000, the relative risk, when you divide one by the other, can seem really big. You may have 100 times more chance of dying from this cancer because you eat, I don't know, bacon. You might have 100 times more risk of dying of a particular cancer. But the risk of each cancer, of that cancer, is still really, 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 really small. It may only be 1 in 100,000 people compared with 1 in 1,000 people. So it seems like, boy, you're certainly going to get cancer if it's 100 times more relative risk. But in fact, the cancer itself may have a very, very small risk. So always think of the number of individuals out of the group who would be affected, not just the relative risk. Now, doctors use this. Often these are called paling palettes, which are used by doctors, which show you in actual terms of people what the risk is. So, for example, some risk of cancer may be 2 people in 1,000. 2 in 1,000, oh boy, that sounds like a lot. But actually what they do is they, on these paling palettes, they will colour in 2 people. Oops, I'm not very good at colouring in with this pen. They'll colour in 2 people, so they'll show you, it's like it's actually just those 2 people out of all those 1,000. And they go, a larger palette, 10,000 people. You have a risk, 4 people in 10,000, that's the green. Whoa, but, if you don't take this treatment, the risk is going to be 7 in 10,000 to you. It's a 75% increase in risk from 4 people to 7 people in 10,000. 75% more likely. Well, but you can see when you look at that out of 10,000 people, even 7 out of 10,000 is a very small risk. Okay, so it helps you see what the odds are, what's the chance. Okay, risk perception, denial, not just a river in Egypt. We sometimes don't understand completely what the risks are or aren't. So just an example here, I will attach a paper that has a lot of exam questions on it about risks so that you can be practicing them, but let's just look at one example here. Using sunbeds, indoor tanning increases your chance of melanoma, that's known. So we're looking at these statistics. And the question is, calculate the relative risk of someone who uses an indoor tanning for the risk of them developing melanoma compared to someone who doesn't use indoor tanning. And interpret the result. Now, the questions often say this. You can write a figure, but they want you to say, what does that figure mean? So the first thing you do is calculate the risk for each group of getting melanoma here. So the risk for the indoor tanners, there were 734 out of 1,297 who developed melanoma. And if you calculate that, divide it, 734 divided by 1,297 is 0.565. Now, I don't know the extent of this melanoma, but anyway. And for those who didn't use indoor tanning, 433 out of 971 developed melanoma. So that's 0.445. And we have to do the relative risk. So the relative risk of the indoor tanners, the indoor tanners, we put them at the top of the fraction, is 0.565 divided by 0.445. And that equals, we divide those, 1.26. Okay, so the relative risk is 1.26. Now, what you need to do is interpret this result. So it doesn't have any units because we're talking about two percentages which kind of cancel each other out. The relative risk is 1.26. So we can say the relative risk is 1.26. So those who use indoor tanning have, we can say they have 1.26 times the risk of getting melanoma. Sorry, it's a bit. Or another way we can write it, if it's 100%, if it's 100%, you've got equal chance, okay? So 1, if it comes out to the relative risk as 1, then we have an equal chance, don't we? An equal likelihood of getting melanoma. So the group that, if it's 1.26, then those who use indoor tanning, the users of indoor tanning, and this is how they often write it when they're trying to kind of scare you, have 26% higher risk of melanoma. Okay, because you know that when you look at 1.26 here, 1 is 100%, 0.26 is 26%. So the users of indoor tanning have 26% higher risk of melanoma. But then you must balance that with looking at, well, what's the actual risk though? Is the risk very, very low? So if it's 26% more, it doesn't really matter? Or is the risk very high? 26% does matter. Okay, so you have to weigh that up. Okay, and that's about relative risk. Thank you.